All right, so today we are diving into something really fascinating. It's kind of like a gossip column, kind of like a self-help book, but it's 1600 years old. It's called A New Account of the Tales of the World. And trust me, it gives us a look into a completely different way of seeing things. So let's just think about this for a second. What do you think made somebody a legend back in, say, 480 China? Was it about winning huge battles, building giant palaces, racking up a ton of money? Well, the answers in this book are probably not what you're expecting. Okay, look at this comparison. On the left, you've got our modern idea of a legend, right? It's all about wealth, power, how many followers you have. But on the right, what we see from this ancient book is a totally different ballgame. It was about your wit, your character, and just your personal style. This book isn't a history of emperors. It's more like a playbook for how to be genuinely, effortlessly cool. So the book we're digging into is called the Shishuo Sinyu. And really, it's just a collection of these short, punchy stories about the scholars, artists, and officials who were basically the celebrities of their time. You can seriously think of it as the ultimate celebrity magazine for China's Six Dynasties period. You have to picture this era. It was a really chaotic and unstable time in Chinese history. Because of all that chaos, the normal ways to get power and influence, they weren't really working. So what became the most valuable thing you could have? Your personality. Your character, your reputation was everything, and it was built out of hundreds of these small little moments that people could see. So, what's really, really interesting is how they actually defined a great personality. The first rule in this ancient playbook, it's all about mastering the perfect comeback. You see, speech wasn't just about talking. It was a performance art. But why, right? Why was just talking so critical? Well, in a time when all the formal rules were up in the air, your ability to think on your feet, to be witty, to be clear, that became the #1 way people measured your worth. And it all revolved around this one very specific social event. And this is it, King 10, which means pure conversation. This was the intellectual arena of the day. You'd get into these witty, free-flowing philosophical debates, and in those moments, you had to prove how smart you were, what your character was like. Your entire reputation could be made or totally destroyed in just one of these conversations. Okay, let me give you a perfect example of this in action. Here's the setup for one of the most famous stories. You've got this 10-year-old kid, a prodigy named Kong Rong. He goes to the house of a super important official, and the place is just packed with all the big names of the era. And of course, the guards at the door won't let him in. How does a little kid talk his way into the most exclusive party in town? He says this. He connects his own ancestor, the great philosopher Confucius, to the official's ancestor, Laozi, the founder of Taoism. He's basically saying, hey, our families go way back, we're old friends. It is so clever and so completely unexpected coming from a child that they just let him in. Total mic drop moment. So what does a story like this actually tell us? Well, first, that wit was a superpower. It let a 10-year-old completely outmaneuver a bunch of powerful adults. By knowing his history and using it in this really clever way, he literally talked his way into the room where everything was happening. This is a perfect masterclass in how you win at pure conversation. But, being a legend wasn't just about having sharp comebacks. It was also about how you lived your life. And that brings us to the second rule from this playbook. Be effortlessly eccentric. See, in this world, being a nonconformist, that wasn't a bad thing. It was actually a sign of real inner strength and being authentic. So let me introduce you to these two guys, Wang Ping and Hu Wufu. These dudes were famous for just breaking all the rules. They drank, they ignored proper etiquette, and they generally behaved in ways that shocked all the buttoned-up, conventional people in society. And they were getting criticized for it all the time. And their response to this criticism is just brilliant. When somebody complained they were acting like wild beasts, Wang Ping doesn't apologize. He just laughs and says, "The cage of the world has its own ground. Why should we be confined?" He's basically saying that all these social rules are just an imaginary cage, and true freedom is realizing you don't actually have to live inside it. So the takeaway here is actually pretty profound. This wasn't just about being wild for the sake of it. It was a philosophical statement. True coolness was being so confident in who you are that you are completely free from what other people think. In their world, breaking the rules wasn't just rebellion. It was a status symbol of the highest order. All right, so we've seen that legends were witty and they were eccentric. But how did you really earn that status? It wasn't about big, grand gestures.
It was about the tiny, almost unnoticeable moments that showed who you really were deep down. And this brings us to our third and final rule. Character is all in the details. Now, this is one of the most famous stories in the entire collection, and the setup is just so simple. You have two best friends, Guanning and Huaxin. They're just studying together, doing a little gardening at the same time.
So the story goes, a really fancy carriage, a symbol of wealth and power, it rolls by. And Huaxin, one of the friends, gets distracted and looks up. But Guanning, he doesn't even flinch. He just keeps studying. And for Guanning, that tiny little moment revealed a huge flaw in his friend's character, a weakness for worldly ambition. So he takes out a knife, cuts the mat they were both sitting on right down the middle, and says, "You are no friend of mine."
I know, it sounds a little dramatic, right? But this act was considered legendary. It showed that your true character isn't revealed in some big test. It's in the tiniest moments of distraction. For Guanning, his friend's little glance showed a mind that was tempted by ambition, while he valued pure focus. And it proved that who you choose to be around is a direct reflection of your own character.
So we've got witty comebacks, strategic eccentricity, and intense focus on the small things. Why does any of this 1,600-year-old gossip still matter for us today? What's the real point of this whole ancient playbook for being cool? Well, the message that's woven through every single one of these little anecdotes is that the things we so often chase, wealth, status, power, all of that stuff is temporary. It's not what makes a person's life legendary. What really, truly lasts is your character, shown through your actions and your words. What makes someone memorable are the stories that people tell about them long, long after they're gone. Guanning is remembered for cutting a mat in half, not for some job title he had. Kongrong is remembered for one single clever sentence. And that kind of leaves us with a final, pretty big thought to chew on. If our legacy is really defined by all these little stories that show our character, what stories are we creating every single day? 1,600 years from now, what stories are they going to tell about us?